Avowed is a first-person RPG where you explore a mysterious land, fight deadly enemies, and use magic or swords to shape your own journey. And honestly, it's got a lot going for it. The combat is fun because you can mix different weapons and spells, but sometimes it feels a little rough around the edges. The world is rich with lore and cool places to discover, but there are moments where it feels a little too empty. The story has some strong moments and lets you make meaningful choices, but it doesn't always feel as exciting as it could be. It's a solid RPG with great potential, and while it's not perfect, it's still worth checking out if you enjoy deep fantasy worlds.
What do you know of the living lands?
Okay, so Baldur's Gate 3? This is probably my most played game on this list, and I think it's actually one of the best games of the last 5 years. The story just pulls you in and doesn't let go with these amazing characters you meet along the way, and the world is massive and so much fun to explore. You can wander around for hours and hours and still find something new, and the open world is packed with secrets and surprises. It's got that classic Dungeons and Dragons feel, but with really cool modern graphics. And the combat is turn-based, which I know can be a turn-off for some people, but honestly, it just works perfectly and gives you time to really think about your moves. I just love how much freedom you have in this game to create your own character and story. Banishers, Ghosts of New Eden is an action RPG that puts you in the shoes of two ghost hunters, Red and Antea, as they explore a cursed town filled with spirits and tough choices. The combat is a fun mix of swordplay and supernatural powers, where you switch between Red's physical attacks and Antea's ghostly abilities, making every fight feel different. But what really stands out is the story. It's emotional, full of difficult decisions, and actually changes depending on what you do. The world is dark and atmospheric, with creepy locations and a haunting soundtrack that pulls you in. Some parts of the game can feel a bit slow, and the combat takes time to get used to, but the way it blends action with storytelling makes it a really unique experience. If you love RPGs that actually make you think, this one is worth playing. Black Myth Wukong is a visual masterpiece with next-level graphics and environments so detailed and atmospheric that I felt like I was exploring a living painting. And the combat is just as impressive because it's fast-paced and challenging, with a deep moveset that lets you unleash some seriously cool combos and transformations to outsmart your enemies. I especially loved experimenting with all the different ways to fight and figuring out which abilities worked best against different enemies. While the story could have been a bit more engaging and some of the boss fights were definitely tough as nails, those are honestly minor complaints in an otherwise incredible game that any fan of action RPGs or anyone who appreciates stunning visuals and challenging gameplay should definitely check out. Okay, so I jumped into Death Stranding, and honestly, at first I was like, what am I even doing? You're basically this delivery guy just walking around this crazy landscape, carrying tons of stuff and trying not to fall over, which is way harder than it sounds. There are these weird invisible monsters that try to grab you, and you have to hold your breath to avoid them, which is kind of creepy. I will say the story is pretty wild and the world is really interesting to explore, but it definitely gets a bit repetitive. I mean, some might call this game a walking simulator, which it probably is, and it might not be for everyone, as a lot of people might find it boring. But there's something about it that just kept me going, like I had to see what was next and where this crazy story was going. Plus, the graphics are insane and the soundtrack is amazing, so that definitely helped keep me hooked. Okay, so I jumped into Dragon's Dogma 2, and at first I was like, whoa, this is a little rough around the edges, because some things were glitchy and it felt kind of clunky. But you know what? They've been putting out a bunch of patches, and the more I played, the more I got hooked. Seriously, the combat is just so satisfying, especially when you're like climbing up a giant cyclops and stabbing it right in the eye. Plus, the world is huge and there's always something cool to discover around every corner. And can we talk about the pawns? I love those little guys. They're always there to back you up in a fight, and they actually learn and get stronger as you play, which is really awesome. I will say that some of the quests can get a little repetitive, and the menus are kind of confusing, but honestly, that didn't bother me too much. If you're into action RPGs with a huge world and tons of freedom, you should definitely check out Dragon's Dogma 2. Okay, so I finally got around to playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And let me tell you, it was like stepping back into a world I knew and loved, but with a whole new perspective. Remember all those awesome moments from the original? Well, they're back, but with even more depth and detail. And the story goes in some crazy directions that I totally didn't see coming. I got so attached to the characters this time around, like they felt like old friends. And the combat kept me on my toes with all the different strategies and abilities you can use. Honestly, I did get a little lost in those massive dungeons sometimes, and the story kind of dragged in a few places, but overall it was an amazing experience that brought back so many memories and made me fall in love with Final Fantasy VII all over again. If you're a fan of the original, you owe it to yourself to check out Rebirth.
Bring it!
The place is coming down!
Okay.
Okay, so I finally got my hands on Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, and wow, this game is a wild ride from start to finish. You get to explore all these amazing locations like ancient temples and hidden cities, and the puzzles are really clever. I spent hours trying to figure some of them out. The story is super exciting too, with plenty of twists and turns that kept me guessing the whole time, plus the graphics are incredible. It actually feels like you're in a classic Indiana Jones movie. The combat can be a little clunky at times though, and I wish there were more enemy variety because after a while it starts to feel a bit repetitive.
Should have left this alone. Yeah? Well, should have done a lot of things.
But honestly, those are just minor nitpicks in an otherwise awesome game. If you're a fan of Indiana Jones or just love a good action adventure, then you definitely need to check this one out. Okay, so I jumped back into No Man's Sky, and wow, what a journey it's been. I remember playing this game when it first came out, and yeah, it had a rough launch with everyone complaining about missing features and bugs, but honestly, the developers have been working like crazy, and it's totally different now. It's actually kind of inspiring to see how much they've added. You can build your own bases, explore tons of planets with crazy creatures, and even fly around in space fighting pirates. It's like they took all the feedback to heart and just kept adding more and more. It's actually pretty wild how much this game has changed. Kind of like Cyberpunk, you know? Remember how that launched? Anyway, now you can team up with friends, go on missions, and even play in VR, which is mind-blowing. There's still a few little things that could be smoother, like sometimes the inventory management gets a bit clunky, but overall, No Man's Sky is a great example of how a game can evolve and become something really special. Okay, so I just finished playing Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown last week, and man, this game is fantastic. It totally takes me back to the old school Prince of Persia games with the awesome platforming and crazy traps, but it also has this really cool new art style that pops. The combat is super smooth too, with tons of different moves and combos to master, plus you can find all sorts of cool weapons and abilities as you explore. And the story is actually really engaging with some fun twists and turns. I got totally sucked in. I will say that some of the platforming challenges can be pretty tough, but that just makes it even more satisfying when you finally nail them. Honestly, I haven't had this much fun with a Prince of Persia game in years, so if you're looking for a challenging and rewarding action platformer, definitely give The Lost Crown a try. Okay, so Sakuna of Rice and Ruin is definitely one of the coolest games I've played in a while, and it's not just a side-scroller even though it kind of looks like one at first. You play as this spoiled harvest goddess named Sakuna, who gets banished to this island with a bunch of humans, and you have to fight demons and grow rice to survive. The combat is super satisfying with all these cool combos and weapons you can unlock, and the rice farming is surprisingly in-depth and relaxing. Like, I actually learned a lot about how rice is grown, which is kind of weird, but also really cool. The story is really engaging too with these awesome characters you meet along the way, and the whole game just looks gorgeous with its hand-drawn art style and beautiful environments. Honestly, the only downside I could find was that the platforming can be a little bit finicky sometimes, and the crafting system is kind of complicated, but overall, this game is a total gem. Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 is seriously intense. I mean, seriously, this game is not for the faint of heart. The story is gripping, and the way it tackles mental health is really something else.
What have you done? Stop. Please help!
You're right there with Senua, battling her inner demons, and the voices in her head are so realistic, it's actually kind of unsettling. The combat is brutal too, and you really have to be strategic to survive. I found myself holding my breath during some of the bigger fights, but what really blew me away were the visuals. The environments are stunning, and the way they blend reality with Senua's perceptions is just incredible. I found myself stopping to admire the scenery all the time, which I don't usually do in games. Honestly, Hellblade 2 is more than just a game, it's an experience. It's definitely challenging and emotionally draining, but it's also incredibly rewarding. If you're looking for something different and thought-provoking, then this is the game for you. Silent Hill 2 Remake is a scary adventure game where you go back to a foggy town to find someone you lost and things get really weird. Now, personally, I love horror games, although this might not be for everyone. The town looks amazing, it's super detailed, and the monsters are really creepy. They made the old game look new, and that's cool, but sometimes you just walk around a lot looking for clues, and it can feel a little slow, like you're just wandering. But then Pyramid Head shows up, and everything gets intense. The story is still really good, and it makes you think about what's really happening. Some parts are super scary, some parts are just sad, and it's all very emotional. If you played the original game, you'll probably like this. It's a good remake, and it keeps you guessing until the end, and that's what a good scary game should do. Space Marine 2 is a big action game where you play a super strong space soldier fighting tons of alien bugs. I played this recently and really love the gameplay. It's like you're smashing through waves of enemies with huge guns and a big sword. You feel really powerful, and the battles are super exciting, with lots of explosions and action going on. Sometimes, though, it feels like you're just fighting the same bugs over and over, and it can get a little tiring. But honestly, the feeling of being a space marine and just destroying everything in your path is so much fun. It's hard to put the controller down. Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl is finally here, and it was definitely worth the wait. This game is a hardcore survival experience that throws you into a bleak and unforgiving world where danger lurks around every corner. The atmosphere is incredible with stunning graphics and sound design that really immerse you in the zone. I loved exploring the eerie abandoned buildings and scavenging for supplies while trying to avoid deadly anomalies and mutated creatures. The gunplay is intense and the survival mechanics are challenging but rewarding. It's not a game for everyone, though, as it can be pretty unforgiving and you'll need to be patient and strategic to survive. But if you're looking for a truly immersive and unforgettable survival experience, then Stalker 2 is definitely worth checking out.